When I was at university, I saved as much of my student loan as possible. In February 2016, during my final year, I'd managed to save about £5,000. So I decided to take that £5,000 and put it in the stock market. Since then, I made returns of over 80% in my first 12 months, and I've turned that £5,000 into over £9,500, including a piece of art which I recently bought. Now, I didn't just wake up one day and decide to pick a stock at random. Although there were a few things that I'd been doing during my time at university which helped me when it came to investing. The first was my degree itself. I was studying accounting and finance. This meant I had the ability to read and interpret and understand and analyse financial statements and anything else with numbers in that a company put out. So whenever a company released anything with numbers in, I could do my own analysis of it, rather than relying on the analysis of other people, which gave me a much deeper understanding of the numbers themselves. The second skill that I had was just a general interest in business. I'd always been interested in business, and during my free time, I'd read books and watch documentaries and listen to podcasts and read articles and anything like that about business and entrepreneurs and anything like that that interested me. So when I came to start investing, I already had a good understanding of what made a great business great or a great entrepreneur great, because I'd already been following them. The third skill, if you'd call it a skill, was a love of reading. I'd always loved to read, and when I was at university, I had a lot of free time. So I read at least a book a week. Now, pretty much all of this reading was in some way related to business, and a lot of it was focused around investing and Warren Buffett. For those of you who don't know, Warren Buffett is the greatest investor of all time, and he's transformed Berkshire Hathaway from a struggling textiles firm into one of the biggest companies in the world, worth over $400 billion. And he's made himself one of the richest men in the world during the process. So those were the three skills that probably helped me the most: being able to read financial statements, an interest in business, and a love of reading. But there was something else which really helped me too, and that was my friend John. When I made my first investment, I basically thought that this stock I'd invested in was the greatest thing in the world, and everyone I knew should invest in it too. So whenever I saw any of my friends, I'd just talk about this stock and why it was undervalued and why it was the best thing ever. And most of them, fairly enough, didn't care at all. And I saw my friend John, and I was going on about this stock, and he actually took an interest in it. So I went on about it even more, and he ended up investing in this stock himself. Now, since then, we've both made a habit of talking to each other about stocks and investing whenever we're together. And we're both better investors for it. We're able to play devil's advocate with each other's ideas and get a second perspective on our own ideas. And we're also more likely to pick up on our own biases towards our own ideas too. Firstly, when we have to explain them to the other person, and then when we have to defend what we've said against what they reply. One of the reasons Warren Buffett is the greatest investor of all time is because of his friendship with Charlie Munger. Warren and Charlie have been friends and partners for decades. Charlie said in a CNBC interview recently that they talk pretty much all the time, but they disagree a lot, and yet they're still quite respectful of each other. What the pair do is they'll talk to each other about their ideas, and then they'll disagree with each other, and then they'll go away and they'll make their own decisions anyway. And a lot of the time, they'll speak to each other knowing that the other is going to disagree with what they're about to say. And they'll still do it anyway, just because they know the value of getting that second opinion. If it wasn't for Charlie Munger, you probably would have never heard of Warren Buffett, for those of you who have heard of Warren Buffett. The reason for this is before meeting Charlie, Warren followed the teachings of Ben Graham, the author of The Intelligent Investor, which is a great book, by the way. Now, what Graham taught was about looking for companies that are undervalued, buying shares in those companies, waiting for it to go up, selling the shares, and repeating the process, which later became known as value investing. Now, the best way to describe this is it's like walking along the pavement and looking at cigar butts on the floor. and then picking up these cigar butts and trying to light them. Occasionally, you might burn your mouth a little bit, but for the most part, you will be able to get an extra puff or two out of these cigars. So that's what Warren was doing before he met Charlie. He was walking along, looking for cigar butts and trying to light them. And he was very, very good at it, and it made him rich. And it would have continued to do so. But it probably wouldn't have made him as super rich as he is now. And the main reason for this is that the biggest limitation of Graham's teachings was because he was buying and selling shares quite quickly. He wasn't benefiting from the compound interest that you get if you hold on to a stock for decades rather than years. So Warren met Charlie, and Charlie persuaded Warren to move on from these cigar butts to looking for great companies at fair prices instead of fair companies at great prices. So if you're interested in investing, I'd strongly recommend that you find someone else who's interested in it and just talk to them. Find someone that you can talk to for absolutely ages and not get bored, and you'll both be better off as a result. Another benefit of this is that you'll be able to avoid one of the main sticking points that most investors face, and that's yourself. Human brains are wired so that we've got loads of innate biases that affect us every single day when we're making decisions. And for the most part, it doesn't make any difference at all, or very little. But when it comes to investing, if you make a decision that's based on a biased viewpoint, you're probably going to be more likely to make a bad decision. There are absolutely loads of these biases, but I'm just going to go over a few of the main ones so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. The first is called confirmation bias. And what that is it's where if we have a thought or a theory about anything, we'll go out and we'll start taking notice of things that prove our thought or theory right. And without us even realizing, we won't take as much notice of things that prove it wrong. So as an example, if I go out and buy a red car, on my drive back in this red car, I might start noticing all the other red cars on the road. And I might come to the conclusion that most people have red cars as well. Now, obviously this isn't true, but I could come to that conclusion because I'm only taking notice of all the red ones. And I'm not taking as much notice of all the cars that drive past me that aren't red. If you do this in the stock market, that could obviously be quite a big problem. If you have a thought or a theory about an investment or a stock, and then you go out and you only take notice of things that prove that your theory is really good, and you don't take as much notice of things that prove it's not so good, you're probably more likely to make a bad decision and lose money. The second bias is called the Gamblers Fallacy. And what that is it's where we'll place weight on previous events, even when we know those events have no relationship to what's going to happen in the future. So, as an example, if I toss a coin 4 times and I get 4 heads and ask one of you to predict the outcome of the 5th toss, you might say tails. And your reason for saying tails could be that there's no way you're going to get another head. Now, logically, this doesn't make any sense, because on the 5th toss, a head is just as likely as a tail is. And what's happened on the previous 4 tosses have absolutely no relationship to the 5th toss. An example of this in investing would be if you look at a graph showing the price of a stock over a year and it's gone like that, you might look at that and think, well, if that continues, it's going to go like that. But what's happened from there to there has no relationship with what's going to happen from there onwards. The past performance of a stock has no relationship to the future performance. So letting it impact your decision in any way is just illogical. The third bias is called the anchoring effect. And what that is it's where once we get used to seeing something at a certain level, that level becomes an anchor we set in our mind, which works as a basis for comparison for anything else we see that's similar. So an example would be if I've been following a stock for, say, a year, and it's been at £20 a share, and then there's a big accounting scandal and it drops to £5 a share, I could be looking at this stock and licking my lips. And the reason, if I got that excited, which would be a bit weird, but the reason that I'd be looking at this stock and getting all excited is because it now looks really cheap. Because compared to my anchor that I've got in my mind of £20 a share, £5 is really cheap. Now, if I then do a proper analysis of this stock, I might find out it's actually overvalued at 5 and it's only actually worth £2.50 a share. And if someone else came in when it was at £5 a share and had a look at it and they did an analysis, they might think, well, I'm going to wait for it to drop to £3 or £2.50. And it'd be a lot easier for them to do that because they don't have the anchor set in their mind, whereas I'm still viewing it as a £20 a share stock. As a side note, by the way, I'd strongly recommend that if you're interested in investing, that you read about psychology, because not only will it allow you to sort of watch out for your own innate biases, but it'll also give you a much better understanding of why stocks and stock markets behave the way they do, because a lot of what they do is based on other people's illogical decisions and biased viewpoints. So if you're interested in investing, having a friend that you talk about investing with can help you to avoid making decisions based on biased viewpoints, and you're more likely to do that, which means you're less likely to lose money. And having a friend that you talk to about investing can help you not only to avoid making decisions based on biased viewpoints and let you recommend stocks to each other, but you can also recommend resources to each other. If I go away and I'm reading books and articles and watching documentaries and whatever else, I can take the very best stuff that I find and recommend it to my friend John. And he can do that with the very best stuff that he finds and recommend it to me. So as a result, the overall quality of the information that both of us are taking in is going up. People have training partners at the gym, and this allows them to stay motivated and make sure they eat the right food. Having an investing partner is exactly the same, except you're working on your mind rather than your body. If you don't talk to people about investing, you might never even get started in the first place. When I made my first investment, the £5,000 that I'd saved up, I had no idea what I was going to use it for, and I had no intention of using it in the stock market. I just saved it up because I thought it might be useful at some point. And then I stumbled across this stock that I thought was undervalued, and I just wouldn't shut up about this stock to my girlfriend. That's right, I've got a girlfriend. Now, she got really annoyed of me just going on and on about this stock. So she turned around to me eventually and just said, well, if you're that confident, why don't you invest in it? So that's what I did. Now, if I hadn't have not shut up about this stock, I never would have got started in the first place. Hopefully, by now, I've hammered home the point that you'll be a better investor if you talk to people. So what I'm going to do now is just finish this speech by recommending some resources that have been useful to me and will hopefully be useful to you as well. And I'd like to point out I'm in no way affiliated with these resources in any way or benefiting at all. They're just useful resources. When it comes to podcasts, the best two that I've come across are Motley Fool Money and the Investors Podcast. When it comes to books, I'd recommend that you read anything you can get your hands on in relation to Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger. Mary Buffett and David Clark have written a great series of books about Warren and why he invests the way he does. I particularly recommend Warren Buffett and the Interpretation of Financial Statements. When it comes to articles, I'd say if you're interested in a company for whatever reason, then just follow that company on social media and every now and then just do a Google News search of what's been happening with that company, even if it's just a company that you just like the products of. If you then later decide to invest, you'll have a much better understanding of this company if you followed what's changed the stock price real time, rather than just reading about it retrospectively. And even if you don't invest in that one, it's just a good habit to get into. I'd also recommend that you subscribe to The Economist, which is a really good magazine for summarising what's happened in the world of business and finance and everything else during the week. If you've got any questions or comments, then feel free to send me a tweet. My username is @thesamball, and that's also my username on everything else. I hope you've enjoyed this speech. Thank you for listening.